Hey, welcome back to Our Awaken. So I recently did a video where I spoke about 30 red flags to look out for in friendships. So I had someone comment on the video asking me how did I work through the trauma because she wants to move on really bad. So I just decided to turn this into a video response because I felt like my comment would have been like really long for the post, and I feel like it would just be great to turn this into its own video because, you know, it just kind of piggybacks off of that. It's not a simple answer, honestly. I had to go through a process, and I completely understand what she means when she says she wants to move on so bad, but it's difficult because when you experience traumas from, like, whether it's friendships, coworkers, family, just the whole negative experiences that you have with them pertaining to the red flags that I discussed, it can be really hard to wrap your head around, especially when you're going through it, because you're so confused as to why it's happening. People talk about relationship traumas, but they don't really talk about friendship traumas. And honestly, when you experience these things, especially from people that you trusted, or just even when it's something that you're constantly experiencing when you're just interacting with people, it can be really difficult and make you feel like closed off and make you honestly want to just avoid people altogether, because it's like, why are people like this? Why are people so negative? And honestly, like, from a higher perspective, I have just came to the realization that there are a lot of insecure people in this world. And when it comes to just the whole idea of like friendships within women, if you call out and say that, you know, this is common, or like women are catty and just a whole lot of just negativity, people will call you a pick me because you say like you don't have a lot of female friendships, or, you know, like you choose to avoid women, or I don't want to say avoid women, but, you know, like you kind of don't really have a lot of female friendships. People will see you as the problem when the reality is a lot of female friendships are toxic. Like, they're not built on a healthy, solid foundation. Of course, there are people out here who have beautiful relationships, and I'm not saying relationships need to be perfect, but like, you'll be surprised how many people are friends with people who it's like the relationship is just not a healthy one. So in my response to this question, it is going to be very raw. I'll be completely honest. Getting over the trauma took a while for me. When I say a while, it took maybe like 2 to 3 years. Like, I'm just now at a point where I feel like lighter in my energy. I don't feel so, like, I wouldn't even say bitter, but like I don't feel so guarded when it comes to the idea of friendships with women. And I say that because I took a lot of time just reflecting on the relationships that I've had in my life where I have experienced these things with women. I'll be completely honest, I was mad for a really long time. Like, I felt like just so bothered. I felt so like, how could you do that to me? Or I felt like, damn, I'm such a kind person. Like, why are you treating me this way? Why do you feel like you need to be in competition with me? I don't give you that impression, or I don't give you that energy, so why are you giving that to me? And for a long time, I really could not wrap my head around why people are negative towards me and I'm not being negative towards them. And it all came down to just understanding that people are insecure. And a lot of times, the way people treat you has nothing to do with you. I'm not saying it doesn't, but like a lot of times, the way people treat you has something to do with how they feel about themselves, but they're projecting it onto you. And understanding that has helped me a lot through this process of just healing through all these relationship issues that I've had. Because before understanding that, I just never really understood, like, why does this keep happening? Why am I constantly thinking that someone's my friend and then they're doing some weird stuff or they're behaving a certain way? I'll be completely honest, I was mad for a really long time. Like, I want to say like 2 to 3 years. I was just so guarded. I didn't really want to be bothered by people. The idea of female friendships was just a turn off to me. I felt like, you know what, I'm just not even gonna bother getting close to people, because every time I thought someone was a friend, or I felt like, you know, I could possibly build a relationship with this person, I always started to see negative traits. People were starting to reveal themselves to me, or I was starting to see people for who they really are, back to back to back to back. So when I say from like maybe 2020 to like 2023, I literally, after I ended a friendship, it's like something would happen and I had to end another friendship. But the things that were causing me to end these friendships, it wasn't just like a one-time like issue that happened. It was a collective of things that I finally started to process. Like, wait, this is not behavior that a person who you should call your friend should show you. So I'm just gonna give a little breakdown of my story so that way you can understand my advice a little more, you know, apply it where it fits best for you. So when I reflect back on my younger self, I can definitely say that I was a quiet person, but I was also really talkative. I was very just out there. I had a pretty big personality, but I was also really to myself. I was creative, I was smart, I was just talented, and I wasn't problematic. I was a pretty friendly person. But you know, like when you're a child, you exhibit traits, but you don't really understand or see yourself in the way that other people see you. You just kind of live in your own little bubble. But I realized that because I wasn't being like nurtured or validated in just myself as a person and just my personality, I didn't really see myself. So people around me weren't really reflecting back to me who I was in their eyes based off of who I was. So growing up, I didn't really see myself from the lens of other people, which meant that I didn't really see myself in a way where I would be confident in knowing who I was. So it's basically like the way other people perceive me to be, I didn't fully see myself in that way, which meant I didn't really have the confidence of knowing myself. And after everything that I've just experienced with people, and at an older age, I was able to reflect on that and notice like, okay, I wasn't self-assured, so I didn't really know myself, but other people saw me. I didn't have a healthy sense of what a friend should look like. So it's almost like people who wanted to be my friend, I would just be their friend. And if it was toxic, I didn't know that, okay, this is toxic. I just knew that, okay, this is just how the person was. So I always made excuses for them. And that also goes into being a people pleaser, but also the people who you're around growing up can affect how you engage in relationships. So that's also another factor. So I didn't really have a healthy sense of what friendships look like. And the reason why it was so difficult for me to really let go of the anger that I was feeling was because I didn't just experience one friendship trauma and then that was it. Like, I was experiencing them back to back to back. On top of friendship trauma, I was experiencing things with coworkers, with family, and it was just difficult for me because when I came to an understanding of, all right, I'm not self-confident to really see myself in the way that other people see me. That's why I kept finding myself in the situations that I was finding myself in. And because I was so used to not being uplifted, but instead it almost seemed like people would always try to humble me, I felt like I had got to a point, and I noticed this in like middle school and like high school, I was humbling myself in order to make other people feel comfortable. And because I was an empath and at a really young age, I learned how to read people. And it was something that I was subconsciously doing. Like, I knew what people were feeling, even if they didn't tell me what they were feeling. I knew that if you're telling me one thing, that you're feeling something completely different. But I didn't really understand how, you know, like I couldn't really wrap my head around it. That also played into being a people pleaser because I felt like I was always trying to like walk on eggshells to make other people feel good, or I didn't really want to come off as a super confident person. It's like I was neglecting myself and not showing up for myself and not standing in my highest power because I wanted to make other people comfortable. I wanted to not trigger other people's insecurities. And being that I was doing that at such a young age, it caused me to not see myself for who I actually was, the person that I knew that I was deep down inside, to the point where I started to lose who I was. I didn't really feel as creative as I once did. I didn't feel comfortable sharing my creativity because it's almost like every time I showed up for myself, there was always a person trying to make me feel bad about showing up. You get what I'm saying? So I had to really work on my self-perception because I was just always questioning, like, why is it that people are treating me the way that they are? Like, why are people being mean? Why are people doing things that I wouldn't do to them? And the reality is, people were seeing me before I saw myself. So I found myself building relationships with people who wanted to get close to me, not necessarily because I said like, oh yeah, like I think you're a great person, let's be friends. It was kind of just like, if you wanted to be my friend, like sure, fine, like I don't have a problem with that, as long as you weren't like a messy person, until I realized that, okay, like you're kind of real slick with it. But if you were an outright disrespectful person and you were just always in like mess and drama, I automatically just didn't really be friends with people like that. So for one, it took for me to really see myself, to really understand why I was experiencing these things from people, because people were projecting their insecurities onto me. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn, like I'm a really creative person, and I feel like I don't like to fit in with society because I feel like it's boring. Like I feel like, have a personality, have, you know, something about you that makes you interesting. And it's not even that I intentionally do it, I'm just naturally a creative person. And because people saw that I was smart, people thought I was pretty, people saw that I was creative, it's easy for people to want to gravitate towards you when you just have a certain energy about you. It's almost like the things that they admired me for, they started to then have like this resentment towards me for. And I genuinely could not wrap my head around it. It's like they wanted to be all buddy buddy, bestie bestie, but then it turned into very like distant, cold, just weird energy. And for a long time, I really could not understand it, because I'm like, I thought something was wrong with me. Like I got to a point where I felt like once I started to show myself and build my confidence, I had got to a point where I'm like, I felt like I needed to hide myself from people, because it's like the closer people got to me, the more people started to see me for who I am, the more insecure it made them, because now they're comparing themselves to me. And I'm not saying everyone was like that, but I've just experienced it a lot. Say when it comes to work, I could be doing the same thing as a person, but because they feel like I do it better, now all of a sudden the energy between me and that person is very weird. And I've experienced that with numerous people actually in business. And then when it comes to friendships, it's the same thing. It's almost like I felt like I was always becoming too much for people, and it started to make me feel really bad. Not necessarily like I didn't love the person that I was, but as much as I loved the person that I was, I also kind of felt burdened by it, because it was just almost like, wow, for me to operate in my full potential, it's rubbing people the wrong way. And it's not that I'm being, you know, flaunty about it, or I'm being really arrogant about it, because I'm not that person. But me having the confidence to show up as I am, for people to now be acting a certain way towards me, it made me feel like I wanted to hide myself. It made me feel like I didn't want to showcase myself. I didn't want to operate from the highest potential that I could, because I didn't want to attract more of that energy from people, because I was so used to it. So it really made me close myself off to people, because I started to feel like my only safe space was by myself. My only safe space was when I was alone and doing my own thing, and I could be my brightest light without having to feel like I'm going to trigger someone's insecurities, because of course I'm not intending to do that, and I don't want to do that, but I can't control how another person feels. And that's something that I really had to come to terms with. I really had to understand that me showing up for myself and then someone else being triggered by it is not my fault. It's not something that I have control over. It's not something that I should burden myself with, because that's not my problem. You get what I'm saying? Like, if you are feeling insecure about the way that I show up, that's for you to look inside of yourself and figure out. And of course, that comes with a certain level of detachment. Like, if people don't like me, that's their business. And this was difficult for me personally, because I was a person, I've never not been liked by people, you know, like even as a quiet person, people always gravitated towards me. So to get to a point where now I am showing up as myself confidently, and then to have people not like you for no reason, it was difficult for me at first because I felt like, again, as an ex-people pleaser, you don't want to not be liked by people. And it's not that I was even doing things in the past for people to like me. I was just naturally a likable person. But to then experience people not liking you, being mean to you, competing with you, doing all these little catty things, and you're being genuine with them, it was so hard for me to wrap my head around, because it's like, what's good with you? Like, why are you acting like this? And honestly, in my moments of truly not understanding why these things were happening to me, when I was feeling really burdened by all of this, I was on YouTube a lot watching videos talking about just friendship, traumas, and just people acting a way towards you when you're showing up for yourself, and just a whole bunch of different content creators talking about these various topics that pertain to this subject. And when I was listening to other people's stories, it was really helping me process everything. Hearing other people's experiences really helped me so much in this journey, which is why I'm making these videos, because I know how stressful and how plaguing it could be to you and not really understand it, because you feel like, well, what am I doing wrong? And I really understand the struggles of going through all of this, especially when you're like, I'm such a kind person. Why are people acting like this? Why are people treating me this way? Why are people starting off in a positive way and then things turn really weird? And I just genuinely could not wrap my head around it, because I'm like, I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm not being snaky towards you, so why are you being snaky towards me? And it made me really just want to close off from people, because I started to realize that in this world, it is really hard to come across genuine, real people that are secure in themselves. And when I tell you there is so much insecure people in this world, I really do mean it. And it's not to say that people don't have insecurities, because we all do, but it's the matter of, are you in control of your insecurities? Are you not going to project your insecurities onto people? Because you will be surprised, like, it's crazy. It made me really embrace being an introvert. I'm like, I don't want to be bothered with anybody. Leave me alone. I felt like it was just safer by myself. I didn't have to worry about me being fake to myself, or me being in competition with myself in an unhealthy way, because you should always be competing with your older version in a very healthy way though. But like, it made me just feel like I just rather be by myself, because I don't have to deal with just no fake behavior, no catty behavior, no you trying to be in competition with me, or you trying to tear me down, you trying to humble me, because I don't do that to you, so why are you doing it to me? So like I said, I really embraced being an introvert because it just felt safer for me. But let's be honest, humans want human connection. As much as I felt safe by myself, it did start to feel lonely after a while, because it's like, damn, like, it would be really nice to have a genuine friend like myself. It would be really nice to, be able to like call somebody up and talk to them. It would be really nice to go on friendship dates. It would be really nice to just, like, get to know a person and it be genuine. And anytime I had those feelings of just wishing that I had a friend and stuff like that, I just realized that I had to be patient, because I don't want to rush into any relationship and be in the same cycle. So to answer this question, I would say that it has been a process. Like, it was a long process to really just go through the process of reflecting, of feeling, of not wanting to be bothered by people at all, but also just finding myself to realize that I'm not the problem. It really took for me to see myself and to really be confident in showing up in my full self, to really understand that it had nothing to do with me. Like, I cannot control other people's insecurities. I can't control how me showing up makes another person feel insecure, or make them feel like they need to be in competition. I had to understand that I was in control of myself and myself only, and I had to leave the responsibility of other people being in control of themselves to them, because I can't control that. No matter how I show up, I can only authentically be myself, and me trying to manipulate myself in a way that is not authentic to me to make you feel confident, I can't do that, and I'm not going to do that because I've done that so long in my life and it got me nowhere besides hurt. So now I'm going to step into my full confidence. I'm going to show up for myself. And if you can't handle it, then you're not meant to be in my life, because I'm here to experience life for me. Like, I'm not here to experience life in a way where I'm not living it up to my fullest potential because I'm worried about coddling other people's insecurities. That's not my responsibility, and I'm not going to make it my responsibility. And after going through that healing work of just understanding that I wasn't showing up in my highest self, and the reason why it was so detrimental for me to constantly dim myself down to make other people comfortable was because I never really got to operate at my fullest potential. I didn't really get to grow because it's almost like I was stunting my own growth because I didn't want to trigger other people. I was keeping myself at the bare minimum because I didn't want other people to feel insecure. I didn't want other people to feel like they had to compare themselves to me, because I'll be honest, and this is me saying this humbly, I am good at a lot of things and I'm not going to feel bad about that. And I'm just now learning myself even more. As a kid, I've always been really talented. I've always been smart and had a unique way of thinking. And as I've gotten older, yes, I've been that same way, but it's almost like I had to be that privately. Like, I wasn't sharing myself with people. And because I was dimming myself down so much, it made me not be as confident as I should have been in the moment. It got to a point where, like, say me right now, if I was reflecting or looking back at like old pictures, I would see myself in high school and I'll be like, wow, like, you were a really dope person. But when I think of the mindset that I was in then, I was insecure. I didn't see myself, like, I wasn't as confident because I've always been around people who were trying to humble me. So it was hard for me to really see myself for who I was in that moment. So when I started to do that reflection of the past in my current moments, I started to notice a pattern. Like, it's not that I wasn't who I thought I was, or it's not that I wasn't this good person. It's just the difference is I have the awareness of myself now versus back then I didn't have that awareness. So I show up differently now. I show up more confidently now because I'm self-assured versus back then I was not self-assured at all. So it was easy for people to just come into my life and kind of play that role of trying to humble me and trying to like downplay who I was. It's almost like people would befriend me because of their high admiration for me. But once they started to really see me for who I was and started to see that I'm not pretending, that I'm not faking, that I'm actually who I'm presenting myself to. And I was always the type of person where I always wanted to help people. So because I saw that, okay, maybe you don't see yourself, or maybe I can tell that you're insecure, I always wanted to be that person for people to uplift them, until I realized, like, that's not my job. Like, of course I can extend that lending hand, but it always bit me in the butt because it's like I was putting myself into relationships with insecure people, trying to uplift them. And not everyone wants that help. Not everyone is ready for that help. And being that I was a person who, if I had a problem, I was trying to find a solution, because I don't like being stagnant. I don't like the feeling of knowing that I'm not happy but still partaking in something. I was the type of person where I was trying to find a solution and trying to better my situation, and the people around me weren't trying to do that and they decided to just play victim. That was also another trigger for them, because I was starting to outgrow them, so they would feel like I'm not the same person that I once was. And I feel like for a long time it made me also develop this fear of just success, this fear of being seen, because I knew that me showing up in my highest form, I would be triggering people, which would then make me lose friendships like I did experience. And honestly, one of the main things that helped push me just towards wanting to genuinely heal the things that I've experienced, to not see the whole world as evil, of not seeing the whole world filled with people out to try to get me, I had to realize that if I am a genuine person and I'm a kind person and I know I'll be a great friend to people, and I'm not saying I was always the bestest friend, but I never did people dirty. There were times where I may not have been as emotionally connected, but that's also because of just my upbringing. I was never really like the mushy friend. That was probably my main thing. But other than that, I feel like I was a good friend to people. I would show up for people when I could in the best way that I knew how to. And with me building my relationship with God and just like really strengthening my relationship with God, I really had to just understand that if I know that I'm a good, genuine person, I knew that God did not put me on this earth to just be alone and by myself and not have people in this world that could reciprocate that same thing back to me. So that really helped me with the mindset of not feeling like I would never come across a good person, I would never have a good friend, you know, I would never come across genuine people, because that's not true. Yeah, I may not have those type of connections now, but that doesn't mean that I'm not going to come across people in life where I could build solid relationships with, especially considering the person that I once was versus the person that I am now. I have so much knowledge to know of red flags to look out for versus back then, I didn't really know these things existed. You know, I just experienced it. I was young, so it's kind of just like I'm just learning life as I'm growing. But now that I have experience, I know the type of people to avoid. I understand that there are people who want to get close to you for not the best reasons. I also understand that just because a person is super admired by you and they're super just wanting to be your friend really bad, I understand that that's not always the best sign. There are a lot of things that I'm aware of now that I know to look out for and that I know to avoid when a person presents it to me. And I also have a lot more boundaries. I just understand that I'm different than a person that I once was, which means that I will be able to attract better things, especially me showing up as myself. Because if you think about it, if I just said I'm going to stay in a house forever and I'm not going to put myself out there and I'm not going to engage with people and I'm just going to be this bitter person, the type of energy that you put out is the type of energy that you're going to attract. So if I feel like, oh, you know, this whole world is just evil and people just aren't good, me putting that energy out, if there's a person who is observing me and they see that I'm in this energy and they're actually a good, genuine person, that could repel them from me because they can see like, oh wow, like she has a lot going on. Versus if I'm in my healed state and I have, you know, just really analyzed and reflected on just my past and why certain relationships happened, why I allowed certain relationships to continue, and also taking accountability for the way that I was showing up in relationships. Me working through all of that now helps me identify healthy relationships because I'm now operating from a healthy place. Versus back then, I was not healthy minded. I wasn't in a confident space. So I was attracting insecure people. Versus now that I have the self-love, the self-respect, and I also, you know, like I'm showing up as myself authentically. I'm not operating from a jaded, broken place. Because I'm able to experience that energy within myself and observe it, I now know what that looks like when I see people. You get what I'm saying? And for that reason, I will be able to identify a healthy minded person who is also of the energy that I would want to be attracted to. So it really just came down to me thinking to myself one day, like, listen, if I operate from a space of just saying like, you know, screw this world, I didn't want to be bothered by anybody, I could potentially miss my blessing of God bringing a person into my life. I could just imagine like 2 years ago when I was going through all of that and I was just not in the best space. I wasn't feeling like just hopeful about relationships, and I was just like, listen, I want to be by myself. If I was still in a super guarded space, if God decided to bring a person into my life or present a person to me, I would not have been able to see them for who they are because I would have been so jaded. I would have been like super guarded, and that person could have been really genuine and I could have missed out on that opportunity. So that was honestly one of the main reasons why I'm like, you know what? Let me work through just this pain that I'm feeling, because yes, I experienced those things in the past, but I also wasn't healthy minded, versus now that I'm in a healthy minded space and I know what the red flags look like, I know what green flags look like. If you present red flags to me, I'm not going to stick around. So I just had to watch a lot of videos to really process the things that I was feeling. But I also had to get to a point where I had to stop watching those videos because it was keeping me in a stagnant place. And when I say like I was watching those type of videos for like a really long time, it got to a point where I felt like I wanted to watch as much videos as I could because I wanted to avoid experiencing things like that. But I had to realize that I can't avoid experiencing things like that in a world full of insecure people. It's just a matter of once a person presents themselves to me, I have to be able to identify that to know, all right, I got to keep my distance from this person or I got to cut this person off. So when it came to me watching the videos on just like fake friends and stuff like that, came a point where I had to stop watching them because it's almost like I was ruminating on that feeling. It's like I was constantly keeping myself in this cycle of reminding myself of the trauma that I was going through versus looking ahead and paying attention to just like the opportunity of like good friendships coming in. Another major thing that I had to do was cut off anybody that I felt doubtful of, that I felt like was showing me these behaviors, but I just kept them around just to keep them around. Because to be honest, having those people around me were making me relive that trauma again. You know what I'm saying? And when I got to that comfortable point of, you know what, let me put myself back out there and try to engage with people, I had to keep reminding myself that I'm not trying to operate from a jaded mindset. You know, I'm not trying to look at people and try to find like every little possible clue that could point me to this person is going to betray me, because that can cause you to potentially sabotage good relationships because you're still operating from a unhealed place. But I had to also come to the conclusion that anybody that I had around me that was exhibiting these behaviors but I kept around me, I had to keep my distance from them, because honestly their behaviors were causing me to relive the feelings that I was feeling from my past experiences. And I realized that that was detrimental to my healing journey, because although I am trying to work through the things that I was like, you know, like where people show you certain things but then in your mind you're like, oh no, like I'm maybe reading into it or I'm probably just overthinking it. I had to also learn to trust myself, because a lot of times people show you who they are, but we tend to make excuses for them because we don't want to believe that what they're showing us is really what they're showing us. And I had to grow in trusting my discernment, trusting myself, to really just come from a place of, if I feel iffy about a person, if I feel like you're showing me something but I'm not really too sure, I'll give you a few chances, but once it's like no longer deniable, I have to cut you off. And that's where I came to the conclusion of, you know what, if a person is insecure, it will be hard to be in a friendship with them, to build a relationship with them, because they're likely to project onto you. And with understanding that, I also had to be comfortable with the idea of not really being around a lot of people, which isn't hard for me as an introvert, but it's just like being comfortable with the idea that I'm not going to be the girl that's going to have like 50,000 friends like you would see other people have. But I'm the type of person where I rather have quality friendships over a whole bunch of friends that I don't really mess with like that. So basically it took me being comfortable with the idea of not being liked by people if it meant me showing up for myself because they're insecure. I also had to be comfortable with the idea that I'm not going to have a lot of friends around me. I'm not going to be around a lot of people, because you can't trust people. Because the reality is you are less likely to come across genuine, real people in this world. So it's just like, I'm not super hyped to like build relationships. I've learned to really be comfortable by myself. And it's just a matter of now, when it comes to allowing people into my life, I have to feel like you're a good fit. I'm not desperate for a relationship. I'm not desperate for a friendship. But I'm just at a point where when God sends a person, I will know, but I also need to make sure I'm receptive to it when it does present itself. So honestly, it really was a process. It is going to take time. It's not going to be like this just easy, quick, resolution. And also, it really takes just understanding that people treat you how they feel about themselves. It just comes down to understanding that, like, a lot of times you are not the cause of people's negativity. Like, they project onto you how they feel about themselves, and that helped me really release the burden off of myself of feeling like I was the problem, or I could do something different in order to not make them feel the way they're feeling. The reality is that's just not my responsibility, and I'm not going to take that on. I am only responsible for myself, and if me showing up for myself makes you feel uncomfortable, that's a personal, like, that's your problem. But all I know is I'm at a point where I'm going to consistently and always show up for myself. I'm always going to be growing. I'm always going to want to be the better version of myself, and I just trust that God will bring those people into my life who need to be in my life when the time is right. But until then, I'm just doing my thing. I'm protecting myself, like keeping myself just at a healthy space. I'll engage with people here and there, but I'm not quick to call anybody my friend. I'm just at peace with myself.